The way we think about money is changing. It's changing fast. And I don't think that, it's going to change that much in the future, to be honest, because things keep changing. And I'm really excited to be talking to a special guest this morning. And because we're going to talk a little bit about, two major trends that is impacting, not that I think will impact. I think it is already impacting it. Some advisors have already thought about this and are already talking with clients along these lines. Many have not. We're still doing things the way that we used to do them. So this is an extremely important episode today, where we're going to get into sort of what these different aspects are. So after the intro, I'm going to reveal a little bit more. But without any further ado, let's start today's episode. Welcome to PROpulsion, the weekly show for financial planners and advisors who want to build better, more successful businesses. I'm your host, Francois du Toit, and every week we dive into the practical strategies that matter, from growing your client base and improving your services to developing yourself and your team. Whether you're running your own practice or you're part of a larger firm, you are guaranteed to find actionable insights to help your business thrive. So with that, welcome, and let's get into today's episode. Good morning, Charlotte. Warm welcome to the show. You and I have been talking about getting you on the show for a while, but warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Francois. I've always enjoyed my conversations with you.
Yeah, it's been incredible. Even though the last time we got short, remember? Which was, I was so disappointed. But anyway, Charlotte, I'm really excited to be talking to you today about these two trends specifically. But before we give anything away, I think, just maybe give people just a brief background on Charlotte, what it is that you do, what your focus is, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll talk about my history in financial services way back at the start of my career, but I am a futurist, and I love looking at different ideas and concepts that affect how we think about the world and how we respond to what is happening today in anticipation of the future, and sometimes what baggage from the past we brought forward. So I love exploring these concepts. I write, I speak, I train, I do webinars, really helping people to develop that mindset for the future that is fit for the future. That's the work that I love to do.
Yeah, I really love that. And I think let's just briefly talk a little bit about, obviously you mentioned that you have a history in financial services as well. That's the one thing, the first time I talked to you on a panel discussion, I did not know that. I did not know that you had all this experience. You hear that somebody's a futurist and you think that, oh, but that's what they've always done, in your case, there's many different things that you've done, but particularly, I guess, just, coming from financial services and then moving into like being a futurist, like how did that happen and what inspired that shift, if you will?
All right. So I have a photograph that shows me doing some particular work. And when I look at that photograph, it sums up the last 5 careers that I've had. So it's, if I can remember them all, futurist, professional speaker, association executive, social media trainer, and I can't remember what the other one was. None of those could I have learned when I was back in school. So it really demonstrates in one image how far we have come in terms of the work that we do. But I started in financial services, beg your pardon. My father was already working in financial services. He'd worked for Old Mutual and Standard Bank, and then Standard Bank Financial Services back in the day. And I then joined and I worked for an insurance company, a bank, a small financial advisor, and then a boutique investment firm that developed new software to manage investments. And now my daughter's done a financial planning postgrad, and she's working for an investment firm at the moment. And when I look at all of this and see what my daughter's doing in comparison to what my father's doing, it reminds me of how far we've come in terms of thinking about the future and how significant that shift has been. So as financial advisors, anybody working in the financial space, we should think ourselves automatically as futurists, because we're helping our clients to consider what the future could be for them, look at different scenarios, assess the trends that are happening around the world and in their lives, and what that will mean for their future financial security. So all financial advisors are naturally futurists. And the more I explore that kind of concept, the more I really want to give people the tools and the insight so that they can be better futurists. So for me, it feels like this continuing expedition into the future, just exploring different things. And nothing stays static like it did back when my father gave me advice about my own future.
Yeah. I really love that. And this is sort of always the thing as well, Charlotte. I find that sometimes you're doing something in the moment, and the one thing that you probably know is, yeah, it's okay, or that you really don't like it, or maybe you even love it. But the one thing that we don't know is what this thing that we're doing right now is going to lead to. That's always the interesting part for me. If I see where I landed up, for example, there's so many things that I really wish now I paid more attention to when I was doing them, because they really would have helped me right now. But in that moment, I thought like, oh man, this is not going anywhere, right? And I guess this sort of leads on. I just want to quickly, just briefly touch on the things that we want to talk about in more depth now. And you talk about binary versus fluid. And you also talk about scarcity versus abundance. And probably the scarcity versus abundance is the thing that would naturally we would, okay, understand. Like either you come from a place of lack or you come from a place of there's more than enough for everybody kind of thing. But the binary versus fluid thing is sort of a different kind of thinking. So my question is just around this, like how are these two sets of trends shaping our world at the moment? And why do you feel it's so important that we highlight these at this point in time?
When we look at trends, we have to see trends in context. So what I've been trying to help people to recognize is that very often the headlines that we see, I mean, apart from the moment when everything seems very connected and something happens in one part of the world and automatically affects another part of the world, but general trends that we see are in terms of context. So what is a trend for North America or for Europe is not necessarily a trend for Pretoria. We could be, experiencing something very different in terms of, return to work and job losses and legislation and political changes and things. So trends really need to be seen in context, which is important for us in Africa to be able to understand what the trends are that apply to us personally. But I'm always interested in what is kind of beyond or behind or beneath the things that we see. So when identified these two particular trends, it's almost like they are meta trends, the thing that lies beneath everything else. And when we see all other trends in terms of those two trends, then they make sense. So if there are political changes, if there are, return to work issues, if there are people who are retiring later, it can all be kind of boiled down to these two trends. And it's not to say that one is right or wrong or better than the other. They are defining how we see things. So scarcity to abundance talks more about resources, and binary to fluid talks a little bit more about identity, about how we think about ourselves in the world and what it is we're trying to achieve. And every other trend can be viewed through those two lenses. I know I'm kind of like mixing metaphors here, but if you look through those lenses at other trends, they make so much more sense. And then you can look at your particular circumstance or conversation and, work out how to move forward on that.
Fantastic. So let's delve a little bit into the binary versus fluid thinking. And I'm sort of keen to learn how these ways of thinking, if you think about like I think binary or I think fluidly, how do they show up in everyday decision making, and why is it important for us as financial advisors and planners to take note of that?
All right. So very simply, binaries are ones and zeros, yes or no, on or off. It's very definitive. It can only be one thing or the other. And there are lots of people who, through their own circumstances or their own mindset, and this would be a fixed mindset, they've defined what is right or wrong or appropriate or inappropriate. And when they're looking at financial planning, they're going to reject certain kinds of potential investments because that doesn't make sense, or that's nonsense, or it wasn't done like that back in our day. People with a fluid mindset are obviously more open to new things. There's a concept where if you can hold two competing concepts in your brain at the same time, it's quite a feat that you don't feel like you have to distill everything to a particular answer. You can kind of like be fluid about these thoughts. People who think like that are more open to exploring ideas, are less defined about how their security is, how protected they are. And the value of that is that the value of that understanding is that when you're dealing with a client who, or yourself even, who would otherwise be open to exploring ideas, who would be reasonable, who could have a discussion, and they're suddenly retreating into binary thinking, it's very often because they feel threatened. And that would be one of the things as financial advisors, is to understand the state of mind of your client before making investments, or when they start making other kinds of decisions, it could be indicating that they feel insecure about something, and that's something we'd want to address.
Now, I mean, I guess that's my next question is, how do we spot where they are coming from, or from what position they are making their decisions? And then I think more importantly, like yesterday, we had a session in the community around this whole thing around risk tolerance and risk assessment, and understanding it from a psychological point of view, and not only from a financial compliance sort of point of view. So how do one, how do I recognize from which position somebody is thinking and maybe making decisions, a client? And then also, how does that impact the advice that I give, or maybe like, determining the risk profile of the client then as such, or how the client will behave in certain situations?
Yeah. I loved what Rudolph was talking about earlier about the questions that we ask clients, and how we have those conversations. And it's financial planning these days is not like it used to be way back in my father's day. It's not just about, selling a policy or making sure that you understand someone's portfolio. It really is helping people to understand what their financial situation is like, or could be in the future. I remember as a young married professional going to a financial advisor with my first husband, and he was on track to become partner in a law firm. And when the financial advisor was looking at the figures and working out how this company works, and looking at what his income would be at this age, in our 50s, my first husband was like, he was looking at things that looked like telephone numbers. And it just was so overwhelming to him. He couldn't conceptualize what this could mean into the future. And that's the kind of thing we're looking at with clients, is having those conversations, asking the questions, seeing at what point are they saying this doesn't make sense anymore, and then coaching them into a new way of thinking. So if we ask questions about, what kind of retirement we're looking at, and it's, I want to work until this age, and then I want to retire and have that much money, it's a very clearly defined, probably unrealistic way for many people to look at their retirement. Because as we're living longer, so it's another trend we're seeing around the world, as industries change and people need new skills, and then sometimes they need to tap into previous experience, there's opportunities for people to redefine their lives entirely and have many retirements. Take some time off to go and learn a new skill, or go back to university, or spend some time with family, and then come back and go into a new career, learn something new, and we can kind of like scatter those around. So it's a whole new conversation about what our lives could be like, what our careers could be like, how we draft out our CVs or our resumes. Because what used to be appropriate in the past about having a good long track record with one company made you safe, and now it makes you look boring, and maybe you want to add a bit of spice to your CV, because that could create more opportunities that will be more relevant for the future. And it's those kinds of conversations advisors need to have with themselves as well as with their clients. Because if we start with a kind of closed, limited mindset about how things should be, we're not going to be flexible enough to help somebody to really draft a plan for their future that would be more responsive. So a lot is conversation, and also understanding where we're coming from ourselves.
So I want to give you an example just briefly of what happened to me in practice. And then I want you to tell me, is this sort of what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So I was always, like not always, like all of us are taught that you plan for a client's expected or life expectancy, right? So for however long we think. So if I'm planning in the event of somebody passing away, I'd say, well, what is the current age of the spouse? what is their expected life, how long they've got left, and then we plan according to that. And then I always did it that way, right? But I had a very young couple, and we did the planning for them, and it turned out that they need like 14, because obviously when you're young, you need money for much longer, right? Although it might be less income, it might be for much longer. So these things add up. So the calculation said 14 million. And I'm like, yeah, there's a nice policy coming from all of this advice.
Yeah.
The guy looked at me and he went like, no, she's still young. She's beautiful. Like, I'm pretty sure she'll be able to find a new husband. I'm going to give her 5 years to grieve, and then she must get on with life. And I'm like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, come on, man, what kind of man are you? Like, number one. And number two is just like, it went against everything that I believed in at that point. But then, I sort of thought about this a lot afterwards. And I thought to myself, like, this is where financial planning becomes unique. It's not about what I believe. So there's no right or wrong. That's basically what I'm trying to get to. And this is what it feels to me like when we talk about binary, it's either right or it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's not, right? You need to be able to adapt. So is that the kind of thing that you're alluding to with binary and fluid?
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember when I kind of started my business career, I had a business coach come in and help me to look at my business. And I very first time I'd ever used a coach, and I started feeling a little uncomfortable about how this conversation was going, but I didn't have enough experience to understand. Anyway, so I kind of ended our coaching sessions, but then I had opportunity to work with 3 of her other coaching clients. And all 3 of them, because of her coaching, they were trying new things, but eventually they all gave up their businesses and went back and got employment because it couldn't work. And it suddenly dawned on me that there was something wrong with that coach. And rather than releasing people into what was possible, she was afraid and she was trying to hold them back and protect them, to the point where their ideas and their businesses were stifled and they failed. So, as advisors, we need to challenge ourselves about how we think about money and the future and possibility. There are, like I said already, new careers that were not possible before. There are new ways of earning money. There's new types of money. When we talk about having multiple streams of income in the world that I work in with speakers, writers, coaches, authors, etc., you can get multiple streams of income, but why can't you get those streams of income from different parts of the world? Why shouldn't you be getting money that is coming from, India or from Malaysia instead of, just the traditional multiple streams that some people look at? So there are so many new opportunities and so many new challenges, people living longer, having different kinds of relationships, blending families. I had a conversation the other day with someone talking about when you get your second or third marriage, you're actually post the marriage model, and there should be a different way to define the relationship you have. And we need to embrace all of those if we're going to give good advice and direction to somebody who's exploring that. So I think the very first thing is to recognize that we shouldn't come along with, I've done this before, I know what the plan should be, here it is, and it's going to be 14 million. It should be, let me really understand what it is that you want from your life and your career and your relationships and your financial world, and how do we work that out together and draft something for you that is unique, because that's a fluid way of responding to that person's need as opposed to coming to something off the shelf that is not going to suit them at all.
Yeah, brilliant. Then let's shift gears to the scarcity versus abundance conversation. I think this is, and this, it's funny how these things sort of feels to me that are intricately linked, because probably, and I mean, this is not always probably the case, but it is probably sometimes, and I don't know, even, let me not say mostly, but definitely the case where binary thinking leads to scarcity mindset, and fluidity. If you have got a fluid mindset, that it maybe leads to a little bit more of an abundance mindset. But yeah, I'm sort of quite keen to hear how these two play into each other, Charlotte.
Yeah. So in the book that I've made available for your listeners, there is a 2x2 matrix that shows how these two trends kind of intersect, and a little bit of explanation about what they mean, in each sector. And there's also a story in there that I'm going to share now. I had a conversation before with a colleague on LinkedIn who is in Nigeria. and I was just starting to explain and explore these concepts. And he came back, he just pounced on the whole conversation about scarcity and abundance. And he's saying, we in Africa didn't have scarcity until the colonialists came and colonized us and introduced capitalism. And now we have scarcity. So I don't want to get into this huge like revolution, like we should like change everything. We are in the societies that we're in. But if you look at the capitalist society, it is built on the assumption that we have to keep growing. We have to keep having more children. Our populations need to grow, and that's not happening all over the world. There's other parts of the world where population is declining, and that affects how the economy is set up. And it needs to keep growing, and there needs to be more consumers so that we could be earning more money and keep this kind of capitalist pyramid scheme going. The concept of scarcity that we have, that we are experiencing, a lot of it is defined by this. It's imposed on us. There aren't enough jobs, or there are enough jobs, but how they're defined and what the requirements are, that creates this kind of scarcity model. You need to buy this new widget, or buy this new car, or buy the next, upgraded iPhone, because marketing has set it up that way that you feel like you're losing out. You've got this kind of scarcity hollow in your life because you haven't bought the latest widget. So a lot of the scarcity that we have is imposed on us, and we accept it because we're part of this environment. My hope would be that people would challenge that concept of scarcity the whole time and see what is really happening behind it. So if we want to live glamorous lives in retirement and have all the opportunity to go to great restaurants and travel and everything else, we're going to need a lot more money in retirement. But if people have redefined their lives to say, I don't feel like I've missed out by not going on an overseas trip or by not upgrading my car to the latest model, then we minimize the impact of that scarcity on ourselves, and it means that we can change our lifestyle and our financial decisions. So there is a lot of that. There's a concept that the world could not cope with more than 3 billion people. We do not have enough resources on the planet to cater for more than 3 billion people. We've now hit 8 billion. In my lifetime, it's double the number of people on the planet. And we can meet those needs. We can meet everybody's needs. But when there are people, societies, economies that are defined by some people holding all of the wealth and resources to themselves and doling it out to other people in that kind of scarcity bracket, that creates a whole different experience. So I don't want to go into like changing geopolitical economic situations, but individually, we need to understand that a lot of scarcity is imposed on us to make us behave in a certain way. Do we want to comply with that, or do we want a different situation? Of course, there are places where there's real scarcity. So we've had droughts here in the country. There's a scarcity of homes. There is a scarcity of jobs. We need to understand that, but a lot of it is imposed, and that's the mindset that we need to be challenging ourselves.
I'm also quite keen you talk a lot about also like coaches and things earlier on, but always when I hear that, there's something that comes to mind is like, but how do my own values and things play into this, right? So how important are your personal values, the things that are important to you? Like for me, one thing is extremely important. Like, for example, if you're a car person, and I'm not, because I'm generalizing here, if you're a car person, like, I think you innately sit with a problem because you are a car person, because those people always want the latest model. It's a passion. It's not of anything else. And you just love it. And it's unfortunately a very expensive hobby, right? So I'm just taking one thing as an example. But how do those things then play into this whole scarcity, abundance, and fear of missing out, all of those things? How do they, or what is the impact of that on all of it?
Firstly, I want to say, if people have hobbies that are expensive hobbies and interests, we should enjoy them. We shouldn't be restricting ourselves. We don't need to have this whole austerity approach to life. Life is worth living and enjoying. But the more we understand about ourselves, the better we can define a life that suits us, and we're not actually fulfilling somebody else's dream, or fitting in with how concepts were shared in the past about what a successful life or career looks like. So that's the main part. I think one of the most important things about values for us is we gloss over it a lot. We assume a whole lot of values. I saw some people at a motivational speakers once, and he said he wants to get them to do something. So stand up and shout out their values, and everyone's going, love, joy, peace, love, joy, peace. And I thought, you haven't thought it through. You haven't really understood your values. And when I sat down and did my values exercise, I was astounded by the things that I came up with, because for me, creativity is one of my primary values. And that wasn't something that I would ever have thought of on the list, but it's the thing that excites me. So I think when it comes to values broadly, and there aren't good or bad values, it's just what really works for us. But the values that play out with these two trends are, is my primary concern protecting me and my family and people like me? And I'll do whatever it takes to make sure we are safe. Is that my primary motivation? Or is my motivation, my value that that we can all have opportunities, that the work that I do can give other people opportunities to live their best life, and we can kind of spread this legacy that can go down through the years and go way beyond us, and people are better for the work that we've done, the influence that we've had. That's personally a value that I prioritize. But understanding those values means that we can see where people are. Somebody with a scarcity mindset, politicians, conservative governments that have this scarcity binary mindset say, my people have to be protected first, and I don't care about anybody else. Anybody who's other than us, they have to pay so that we're safe. And that creates a political, economic environment that we have to operate within. But where we understand our values, it means we can make better plans for the future.
Fantastic. So if there's an advisor or a planner here listening today, and they want to say, like, all this stuff sounds very intriguing. I need to pay more attention to this, or I maybe need to even gather some skills in this area, so this comes more naturally. I can identify where my clients are operating from. As you said, even more importantly, probably where I'm operating from. What are some of the key steps you think they should take to get started on this? What are the first things you would suggest that they do to get to sort of go down this road?
I think the first step would be really to, take a business card out and add plus futurist on it. Just write it on, put it there on your desktop. You don't need to tell other people. But if we start to think of ourselves as futurists, then we will actually face the world in a very different way. So that would be the first part. And then start challenging any of your assumptions, your own values, how you think about your clients. Pause for a moment before you make a decision or say something, or engage with content online, and just say, how am I thinking about this? What are my default models in my brain that make me think this way? We don't have to change everything. Not everything is bad, but the more we understand that, the more we can be intentional about how we deal with this situation and how that projects into the future. So the more we think of ourselves as futurists, the more we'll start to develop that strategic foresight for the future, for ourselves and for our clients. There's a whole lot of mindsets and tools and skills. They're all out there and available to people to develop that. But the first part is taking that step to redefine how we think about the work that we do.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. So we did make the book available. I did show the link for a moment on the screen a little bit earlier, but it is in the description to this episode. So down below, you'll find there in the description, it says the book is available for download. It's completely free. Nobody asks you for anything, not an email, nothing. You can just go and download the book, and that can get you started as well. And then also, I did share Charlotte's LinkedIn URL, the link to her LinkedIn. So you can also go and follow her there. I definitely would suggest that. Anything else you would prompt people to do, Charlotte, to learn more about you and what you do, and sort of just learn from your journey?
Thank you. Yes, connecting on LinkedIn is great. I share a lot of content there. And I'm very happy to have a conversation as I develop some of these ideas. I love to kind of test them out on people. So there's regular webinars that I host where we just kind of test run some ideas. If you see any of those, you're very welcome to join those webinars that are free.
Fantastic. Charlotte, thank you very much for your time. There's so many more questions I had that I wanted to ask, and we just ran out of time just like that. But
Yeah.
definitely a conversation I would love to delve deeper into. So we'll chat. But thank you so much. And
Thank you.
yeah, have a fantastic weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Sure. So quickly went the show, right? I think I'm a bit rusty sometimes with some of the things. Like, I don't know, there's just too much going on. What a fantastic interview. Like, I really love chatting to Charlotte. It's so easy to talk with her, and so much gold that she shared. So I want to say massive thank you once again to Charlotte. And I definitely want to continue this conversation because there's so many things we wanted to get into for which we didn't have time. So we'll make a plan for that. But on that note, we'll let you know what's happening next week on the show. And then if you've got any suggestions for us of people you would love for us to talk to on the show, please do let me know. Those of you that are on the WhatsApp group, you can just reply to an episode there and then just share it. Or you can just send me a private message. That's also perfectly fine. And yeah, fantastic. So I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. Be safe, be blessed and prosper. And stay curious and continue to raise the bar. I really love you lots and enjoy this amazing profession. Thanks for joining us on Propulsion. If you found value in today's episode, then there's plenty more where this came from. You can find all our previous episodes right here on the podcast as well as on our YouTube channel. And talking about the YouTube channel, we go live every single Friday at 8 a.m. until 9 a.m. and we host many different guests, and we also talk about very interesting topics. And on the live show, there's also some incredible segments hosted by some of the most well-known and influential financial planning professionals. So you are most welcome to join us every single Friday. Put it in your diary and we will see you there. And on that note, also please do check out propulsion.co.za/community for all of the goodness and learn more about how you can become part of our amazing community and how that would benefit you, your business, and your career. So on that note, stay curious and keep raising the bar.